The summer of 1987 shimmered with a golden haze over San Jose, California, a city already buzzing with the nascent hum of silicon and ambition. Mark Riley, 26, was right there, on the cusp of it all. A bright, eager software engineer at a promising startup, he saw the future in lines of code. Sarah Henderson, 24, his girlfriend, found her passion in the intricate legal labyrinth as a paralegal, her sharp mind meticulously piecing together cases. They were young, vibrant, and fiercely in love, their world a canvas of shared dreams. A small house in the burgeoning suburbs, maybe a couple of kids, and certainly a lifetime of adventures. Their adventure that August was a long weekend getaway to Lake Tahoe, a familiar escape from the valley's heat and the relentless pace of their careers. Mark's pride and joy, a forest green 1984 Ford Bronco, was packed with hiking gear, a worn ice chest full of cheap beer and sodas, and a mixtape Sarah had painstakingly compiled, a blend of Utwo, Bon Jovi, and Whitney Houston, the soundtrack of their summer. They left San Jose on Friday, August 14th, the Bronco's engine humming a contented tune as they chased the setting sun eastward, anticipating the crisp mountain air and the sapphire expanse of the lake. Their destination was a modest motel on the Nevada side of South Lake Tahoe, a place they'd stayed before. They spent Saturday morning hiking a popular trail near Emerald Bay, the panoramic views breathtaking, the air sweet with pine. In the afternoon, they tried their luck at the craps table in a bustling casino, laughing as Mark inevitably lost more than he won, Sarah playfully chiding him. That evening, they had a casual dinner at a lakeside diner, sharing a greasy burger and fries, talking about their future, oblivious to the clock ticking down. They were last seen by a tired security guard leaving the casino floor around 1:30 a.m. on Sunday, August 16th, hand in hand, Mark's arm around Sarah's waist, heading towards the parking lot where the Bronco waited. They planned a more ambitious hike for Sunday, a less traveled route Sarah had read about, promising solitude and even more stunning vistas. By Monday morning, a quiet disquiet began to settle in. Mark's younger brother, David, who was supposed to pick up their mail, found their apartment locked, no note, no call. Sarah's mother, Eleanor, tried her daughter's work number, then her home, then Mark's. Nothing. Alarm bells, faint at first, began to toll. They weren't the kind of kids to just drop off the map. By Tuesday, the disquiet had morphed into full-blown panic. Calls to the motel confirmed the room was empty, the beds unmade, but their bags were gone. The motel staff assumed they'd checked out, though no one recalled seeing them. The Bronco was nowhere to be found in the parking lot. David Riley made the agonizing call to the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Miller took the initial report, a weary sigh in his voice. "Sir, it's not uncommon for young couples to take off for a few days, maybe extend their trip. They'll probably turn up." But David insisted. Mark and Sarah were responsible. They had jobs, commitments. They wouldn't just vanish. He gave detailed descriptions. Mark, tall with dark hair, a confident smile. Sarah, petite with vibrant red hair, a quick wit. The green Ford Bronco, license plate details, a small dent on the rear bumper. The initial investigation was a scramble against time and the vastness of the Sierra Nevada. Flyers with their smiling faces, printed in grainy black and white, appeared in every diner, gas station, and general store from Truckee to State Line. Deputies combed the roads leading out of South Lake Tahoe, questioned motel guests, casino employees, park rangers. A few people remembered seeing a couple matching their description, but nothing concrete after that early Sunday morning casino exit. The proposed hiking trail Sarah had mentioned was searched, then expanded, but the dense forest yielded no clues. Search and rescue teams, their faces grim, spent days meticulously sweeping remote areas, but the wilderness swallowed their efforts whole. The first theories emerged quickly. They simply drove off somewhere, perhaps a spontaneous road trip extension. Then, as days turned into a week, darker possibilities arose. An accident. The winding mountain roads were treacherous, especially in the dark, or something far more sinister. The detective assigned to the case, Detective Richard Vance, a seasoned but increasingly cynical officer, had seen it all. Runaways, accidents, and every shade of foul play, but with Mark and Sarah there was nothing. No note, no struggle reported, no financial motive, no known enemies. Their lives were an open book of normalcy. The Henderson and Riley families were plunged into a living nightmare. Eleanor Henderson, a woman who had always exuded quiet strength, visibly aged, her eyes haunted, her once vibrant spirit slowly eroding under the relentless weight of uncertainty. Mark's parents, stoic and reserved, channeled their grief into desperate, organized searches, bringing volunteers from San Jose, poring over maps, refusing to give up. David, now shouldering the weight of his brother's absence, became the family's relentless advocate, hounding Detective Vance, ensuring the case wasn't just another forgotten file. Weeks bled into months, then years. The seasons cycled through the Tahoe Basin, scorching summers, brutal, snow-laden winters that buried the landscape in white, then springs of roaring meltwater. Each change of season brought a fresh wave of hope, quickly extinguished. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every glint of metal in the sun, every discarded piece of clothing, became a momentary jolt of anticipation for searchers, only to crumble into disappointment. The case went cold, relegated to a dusty cabinet in the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, a thick file growing heavier with unfulfilled promises and unanswered prayers. Detective Vance retired, replaced by younger officers who inherited the legacy of forgotten faces. The local community whispered theories: a disgruntled casino patron, a run-in with drug dealers, a tragic, unnoticed accident off a remote logging road. But without evidence, they remained whispers, fading echoes in the mountain air. Eleanor Henderson, now in her mid-60s, kept Sarah's bedroom exactly as it was, a preserved shrine of youthful dreams. Mark's brother David, now married with children of his own, saw his brother's face in old photographs and felt the familiar ache of absence, an open wound that never quite healed. The annual vigil held by the lake on August 16th dwindled from dozens to a handful, a testament to time's brutal indifference. Then, 16 years later, in the summer of 2003, the unforgiving landscape of the Sierra Nevada finally offered up a piece of its grim puzzle. It was a particularly dry year. A long, harsh winter had led to an intense spring thaw, followed by an unseasonably warm and dry summer. This combination had weakened the soil in areas previously undisturbed. On July 28th, a crew from the U.S. Forest Service was surveying an old, forgotten logging road, long overgrown and deemed impassable, deep in the remote reaches of the Toyabe National Forest, miles south of South Lake Tahoe, near the Nevada-California border. They were assessing potential fire hazards in the unusually parched wilderness. One of the crew, a young man named Josh Miller, was scrambling down a steep, heavily wooded ravine, following a faint game trail. The ground beneath his feet shifted, a small, almost imperceptible tremor. He braced himself against a cluster of gnarled pines, and as he looked down, something caught his eye, a glint of faded green metal amidst the rust-colored pine needles and decaying leaves. It was barely visible, mostly obscured by a thick tangle of manzanita and scrub oak, but unmistakable. The curved rear bumper of an old vehicle. He called his supervisor, his voice hushed with a mixture of awe and apprehension. What they found, after carefully clearing away years of overgrowth and debris, was the skeletal remains of a forest-green Ford Bronco, incredibly rusted and battered, its tires long since disintegrated, the chassis twisted. It lay on its side, wedged precariously against a massive granite boulder, almost perfectly camouflaged in the natural depression. The front passenger side was crushed inward, indicating a violent impact. The scene was immediately secured. The new generation of Washoe County Sheriff's deputies, along with forensic investigators, swarmed the remote ravine. The extraction was painstaking, the terrain treacherous. Inside the corroded metal shell of the Bronco, the grim truth began to unfold. 2 sets of skeletal remains were found, still mostly in their seats, though years of decay and the forces of nature had taken their toll. Amidst the detritus of a forgotten life, a faded Utwo cassette tape, a shattered rearview mirror, a small, worn leather wallet, personal effects were meticulously collected. A driver's license, miraculously preserved in the wallet's plastic sleeve, bore the face of a smiling, young Sarah Henderson. Mark Riley's distinctive watch, its glass shattered, was found near one of the skeletons, frozen at 1:47. The discovery sent a jolt through the quiet, forgotten cold case file. Detective Amanda Reyes, a sharp, methodical officer, now led the investigation. She pulled the thick, yellowing file, the original reports from 1987, the faded flyers, the handwritten notes of Detective Vance. Dental records confirmed the identities of Mark Riley and Sarah Henderson. Forensic anthropologists were brought in, their delicate work revealing the likely cause of death: massive trauma consistent with a high-speed crash. There were no obvious signs of foul play, no bullet holes, no stab wounds on the bones, no evidence of other individuals at the scene. The theory began to coalesce. In the early hours of that Sunday morning in August 1987, perhaps after leaving the casino, Mark, possibly fatigued or distracted, had taken a wrong turn onto an old, unmaintained logging track, thinking it was a shortcut or simply looking for a quiet spot away from the main road. In the darkness, unfamiliar with the treacherous terrain, he had lost control. The Bronco had plunged down the steep, hidden ravine, a fall that would have been instantly fatal. The dense forest, the depth of the ravine, and the sheer remoteness of the location had conspired to conceal the accident for over a decade and a half. The news reached Alina Henderson via a solemn phone call from Detective Reyes. The grim closure she had longed for yet dreaded had arrived. She flew to Reno, then drove to the county morgue, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. She saw not the skeletal remains, but the images of her vibrant daughter, frozen in time. David Riley, now a man in his 40s, stood beside her, his face etched with a grief that had been held in suspension for so long. The families held a memorial service by the lake, near the spot where the Bronco was finally recovered. There were tears, but also a fragile sense of peace. The what-ifs and where-are-theys finally had a chilling answer, but the darkness lingered. The questions about those last few moments, the fear, the impact, those would forever remain trapped within the rusted shell of the Bronco and the silent, unforgiving wilderness of Lake Tahoe. The lake, beautiful and serene, held its secrets tight, finally surrendering just enough truth to let two souls rest, 16 years after they vanished into its shadows. Total characters, including spaces, 21,532.